The pick is in.
The Utah Jazz have made another selection in the 2025 NBA Draft. I'm Doug Branson, joined now by David Locke, host of Locked On Jazz. And the Utah Jazz have selected Walter Clayton Jr. out of Florida with the 18th pick. David, what drove Utah to trade up from number 21 to number 18? Was it Clayton's championship pedigree, his shooting ability, playmaking upside, all of the above?
I mean, they wanted this guy. That's clear, right? When you trade up for 18, and if you go back to the draft and look at it, there were a lot of guards on the board. The guards had kind of slid with the surprising pick from China by Portland and things of that nature. So the board was sliding for guards, but they weren't interested in any guard. They wanted this one specifically in Walter Clayton Jr. I think competitiveness, I think the winning, I think is a real mantra that we're hearing since Austin Ainge has taken over the decision-making for the Utah Jazz. And Austin Ainge made an interesting similar pick a few years ago with the Boston Celtics in one Peyton Pritchard, who was a 4-year college player out of Oregon that's turned out very well. Might have some similarities to Walter Clayton Jr.
What do you like about the pick and about Walter Clayton Jr.'s game and how it fits in with what Utah needs to fill in terms of gaps and what they would like to do next season?
Well, I don't think there's any question that when you talk about Walter Clayton Jr., the first things you're going to talk about is the 30-point game against Texas Tech and the 34-point game in the national championship against Auburn. They're pretty awesome, big-time moments. The kid also won the high school state championship at Florida and was a very good football player. Had offers, I believe, from Nebraska and Notre Dame as a defensive back, return specialist, and a quarterback. So this is a big-time athlete. Started his career at Iona basketball-wise and then went to Florida. I think that comes together. His shooting's elite. He's actually it wasn't talked about it much. We talked about Con Knippel and we talked about Trey Johnson, but there's some aspects of Walter Clayton Jr. that are better than any other shooter. This one's remarkable to me, Doug. He took 245 jump shots last year off the dribble in college. Okay, give me reference point? The next closest of anyone drafted tonight was Trey Johnson at 194. So he took 33% more shots off the bounce than the second most player and was in the 89th percentile doing it, the best of any player in this first round of the draft. So he's in the 89th percentile. He took an incredibly high volume. Then you look at his catch and shoot numbers. He's in the 80th percentile. The only guys better, Jace Richardson, Con Knippel, and Trey Johnson. And you look at his spot up shooting, he's in the 88th percentile. And the only guy better, Con Knippel and Jace Richardson. So this is not only a mature leader and a winner, but this is one of the best shooters that was available in this draft. 22 years old, so a little older. But if you look back at the last few years, late first-round draft picks, Marcus Sasser out of Houston, Desmond Bane out of TCU, Peyton Pritchard out of Oregon, Quentin Grimes, I think by that time out of Houston from Kansas, Christian Brown out of Kansas. Those guys who spent 3 and 4 years in college, drafted late in the first round, have been successful.
You mentioned his star play as a football player. When you look back at some of those highlights, he looks really tall for a football player. And then when you look at the highlights from his time in Florida, he doesn't look so tall. Let's talk about his size when it comes to his defensive upside. How do you think he's going to fare defensively versus bigger combo guards or wings in the league?
There are 2 reasons he was available, right? Like, let's be honest. We're at the 18th pick of the draft. There has to be some reasons that he's available. 3 reasons. I think 1 was age. 2 is his size, both offensively and defensively. He shot just 56% at the rim last year. That's where I think that size kicks in on the offensive side. And then defensively, he's only a +1 wingspan. He's 6'3" with a 6'4" wingspan. So yeah, that's the drawback. That's why he was available with those shooting numbers, with that pedigree, with that national championship. That's why he was available at 18.
When you zoom out and look at the draft as a whole, Ace Bailey at 5, now Walter Clayton Jr., you combine that with all of the context of what you currently have on the roster in Utah, and it says what about the status of the Jazz's rebuild?
So let me ignore the whole roster for a second and just take the night. I think a lot of people say this, okay, the Jazz would have liked Cooper Flagg. Like, let's be honest. So the idea that we got everyone we wanted. Once the Jazz were 5th, they probably wanted Dylan Harper. Then I think they probably wanted Ace Bailey. Like, that's the way this thing looks. From the conversations I had with people, it was clear to me going into tonight that the goal of the night would be Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr., that those were the two players. And by trading up to 18, I think they proved that. When I first saw the report that Walter Clayton Jr. came across 18, I was like, dang it, they didn't get their guy. Then obviously the next report was the Jazz traded up from 21 to get that. They traded second-round picks that I think second-round picks are maybe the most overrated thing in the world now with the amount of kids that go back to college. So I think from a Jazz standpoint on the night, they got what they want. From the standpoint of where the rebuild is, if you include Walker Kessler in the rebuild, there's one player that they know is a rotation, bona fide NBA rotation player, and that's Walker Kessler. But if we're honest, we don't know yet on Keontae George or Bryce Sensabaugh or Taylor Hendricks, who was injured all year, or Isaiah Collier or Cody Williams or Kyle Filipowski. They have 6 young players. They now have 8 young players, and they don't necessarily know which of them are going to be NBA rotation players. So I would say the rebuild is still in its infancy.
All right, let's focus on Walter Clayton Jr. For more on his game. Here's Brendan Olson of Locked On Gators.
The best shooter in the 2025 NBA draft, Walter Clayton Jr., has a new home. I am Brendan Olson with Locked On Gators. Walter Clayton Jr. was the coldest shooter I've ever laid eyes on a college basketball court. No moment was too big for him. In fact, Walter Clayton Jr. might have been too big for every single moment that was thrown in front of him as he led the Florida Gators to a national championship, and he carried the offense at times. You look at the biggest moments, the biggest games, and even if he's not playing a great game at that moment, he goes out and gets the bucket when it's needed. We saw him facilitate the offense all season. He's been proven that he could be a playmaker and not just a bucket getter. If he improves that defense just a bit, you're looking at a guy that's going to have a long career as a rotational player in the NBA. Love Walter Clayton Jr.'s game. I think he's a very modern basketball player, and I think he's going to have a lot of success at the next level.
For continued coverage of Walter Clayton Jr., make sure you check out Locked On Jazz and David Locke on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Doug.